All right. And here we are. Hey, everybody. Greg Siskind here. I'm joined by my colleagues Meghan Moody and Adam Cohen. We are kind of like the J crew
J. Crew.
in terms of expertise this week. A lot of if you are at all a student or a physician or have any other J waiver issues, you've got a good assortment of people who know a lot about that issue. But we're going to actually talk about all the week's immigration news this week. There has been, I don't know if last week was crazy. I don't know if you saw it last week, Adam or Megan, if you're watching, but the travel ban news dropped literally like 4 or 5 minutes before the hour when we were starting, and Elisa was like, "It's like, Lisa, why do you check your email constantly and your news feeds constantly?" We could have gone for the whole hour without seeing that, although somebody watching probably would have told us on there. But we were like, literally, as we're like talking now, we're trying to figure out, read this thing, what it is. And we were learning, we were as we were reading it and kind of summarizing it for the audience, we were like learning it for the first time. So I don't think that's happening this week. In fact, this week but there is a history of, so next week is the annual meeting of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. I've joined AILA in 1990 or 91. I can't remember, but what I can tell you is that I've been to every meeting since I joined the organization on there. And it's sort of like the highlight of the year really for immigration lawyers, as far as really being able to learn and being able to see colleagues and being able to do a lot of interesting things. And then we also go through the exhibit hall and we see all the amazing tech that's evolved over the years and everything that's going on. So we're getting ready to do that for next week. But there is a history of major news dropping on the eve of the AILA conference on there. I mean, DACA happened then. It was travel bans happened. And I mean, it was like all these big things that have over the years. And I don't know whether some presidencies, I think they were like announcing it because they had a lot of government speakers that were coming to the meeting and they wanted to kind of tout the big news, whatever they were going to be releasing. And, that is usually when there was a pro-immigration administration. And I will say, for most of my career, most administrations have had some pro-immigration aspects to them. Some of them were, got tough on enforcement, like the Obama administration, but they did a lot of things as well that were pro-immigration. It's really only been this administration and the first version of this administration where, we've been used to constantly bad news. But I don't know if anything's going to happen. It seems like everything that they're not holding back on anything, the administration, as far as like pushing out things that would be considered bad news by the immigration lawyers. But I don't know. You never know on there. Hope maybe we'll get you never know. There could be a pleasant surprise somewhere along the way. But I'm trying to figure out what that might be. And I'm not coming up with anything.
I think last administration, it was the movement in the visa bulletin. Last Trump administration, I should say, right? That was in October 2020. That was a nice surprise for everybody, but it was caused by COVID and embassy delays.
Yeah, COVID, we kind of like figured out that after Biden came in that Biden could be just as difficult on the COVID stuff as the Trump administration. And we ended up, as viewers know, that our firm has been involved in a lot of mass litigation over the years with our colleagues at Impact Litigation. And we sued a lot over COVID on there. But made some good precedents, which we will maybe relying on again very soon for some new litigation relating to new visa bans and travel bans that came out. So maybe that's a good place to start, since last week we were just sort of figuring it out. But it's now June 11th, so we're about 72 hours in since this travel ban went into effect, Megan. So you want to give a sort of a recap for everybody on what what happened on Monday, and then we can talk a little bit about what that means from a practical perspective.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so as Greg said, the travel ban went into effect on Monday. I know Elisa went into detail about it on last week's call, but I do just want to recap, what countries are affected. So there's a full ban, there's a full ban and a partial ban. The full ban is on 12 countries: Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. And that is a full ban on immigrant and non-immigrant visas. Then there's a partial ban on 7 more countries. So Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. That is, they're suspending entry into the U.S. of immigrants, B, F, M, and J visa holders, and reducing the validity for other non-immigrant visas that are issued after the ban went into effect on Monday, June 9th. So they're saying that this list of countries will be reassessed in 90 days. So they may add more. They could remove some. I don't know if that's likely to happen.
Who are some of what are some of the other waivers available? I know there are. So tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so there are some exceptions, and there are also some potential exemptions. So we've got another national interest exemption. If the travel would serve a U.S. national interest, that's going to be discretional, determined on a case-by-case basis. There's also some exceptions for green card holders, exceptions for athletes, coaches. I think Elisa went through these last week as well, but athletes, coaches, and immediate relatives coming to the U.S. for the World Cup, the Olympics, and other major sporting events. We've got.
I've been saying to people, it's like, I don't think the World Cup and the Olympics are going to happen. I have this bad feeling that something that the countries that's going to be taken away from us for some reason or not. Although there was an article in the New York Times today about, for some reason, the FIFA head loves Donald. He's super tight with Donald Trump. So the World Cup might be safe, but
maybe that's why there's the major sporting events. Maybe that's the purpose.
Right, and maybe that's why the travel ban came out a little bit later than we had first anticipated. Had to make this exception for the World Cup.
I kind of wonder too on the national interest piece of this. I wonder if I'm just misremembering, but during the COVID travel bans, there was always a national interest exception as well. And I thought that written into those, maybe at least some of those bans had that healthcare focus. Probably those who were at that point maybe engaged in research or clinical work that was related to to COVID at the time. But I would imagine that there would be healthcare implications, research implications that can be brought to bear to make a good national interest exception case.
There is an interesting exception waiver that's available, where it's an automatic exemption for. You mentioned green card. I mean, immigrant visas were banned, and that is true. But immediate family immigrants are not. So spouses, minor children, and parents of U.S. citizens can still enter from those countries. They should still continue with processing. So immigrant visa processing hasn't come to a complete halt, but it's and that's a pretty big exception. But fiancés not covered, and that's an issue that impact litigation kind of specialized in the during the COVID bans, where we did 6 mass cases for fiancés that were covered, and we are. I will tell people that we are likely pursuing that again. We should have some news on that hopefully before the AL conference starts. But it's we definitely want to do it. There's some prep work that we have to go through before we make any kind of announcements. But stay tuned on that if you're thinking about litigating as a K-1 applicant for your spouse. For your fiance, and you're interested in being part of a a suit. If you want to send me an email, and my email address is not that hard to find if you Google me, send me a message and I will get you on a list to notify as soon as we have any news on that. So that's one thing I could tell you that on it. And we've had a lot of discussions going back and forth on legal theories, but we're not going to talk about that on a live stream, mainly because we don't want to really kind of give it away. But that's something that's one aspect. It's hard to litigate on travel bans because of the Trump v. Hawaii Supreme Court case from the last administration. But it's not impossible. There is a process that they have to go through. There are still constitutional arguments that were not litigated in the Hawaii case, and there's also for fiancés in particular, there are some interesting arguments that can be made. And my guess is probably there's not a they just got forgotten because, when you allow spouses to come in on immigrant visas, but not K-1 fiancés of U.S. citizens who are likely not, the only reason that they're going through the K-1 process is because they want to marry in the United States instead of marrying abroad. On there, that there's not a whole lot of difference between those two groups. So it's a question about why they were left out. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so if that's something that, like I said, that affects you, you can let me know. All right, Megan, what do we got next?
Yeah, Adam, did you want to give some updates on what's going on with international students?
Sure. How much time do you have?
What's going on?
No, there's nothing. We can skip ahead. No. Yeah, this could take up most of it. I'll try to be brief. Yeah, I think where to start.
I guess the FMJ, man. The FMJ extreme vetting announcement. Because
yeah, sure.
I'm still getting a lot of questions on that. I'm sure you are.
Do you mean the pause? Is that what you're talking about, Greg?
Yeah. And it's confusing because some people hear it's like, oh, my friend got a visa. Why can't I get an appointment on there?
Right.
Can you explain kind of what's going on?
And just so you all know, part of this this cable that came out, basically, it says effective immediately in preparation for an expansion of required social media screening and vetting, consular sections should not add any additional student and exchange visitor (FM&J) visa appointment capacity until further guidance is issued. And there's supposed to be some other separate memo that we have not seen that was mentioned, that was referenced in this cable. So, this pause seems to be for anyone who has not actually secured one of these appointments yet, right? And it's broad. My understanding is it's very broad. It's FM&J, right? Not just J students, college and university students, but something broader than that as well. People who have been able to still process, a lot of them have already had visa appointments. It could be someone who is Canadian who never actually needed, is visa exempt in that category and never actually needed a visa appointment. Or there could be others who are present in the U.S. already and they were able to change status within the U.S. Right? Those are not affected by this particular pause. And in terms of, I guess I'm not sure if people are seeing other things. I'd love to hear, if you've been able to, or you've had colleagues or friends who've been able to secure visa appointments, because my understanding is that they're basically paused at this point. And in terms of when they're going to be coming back, at first a lot of us were concerned that this would be something punitive and maybe long-term, but it doesn't appear to be that way. So the last briefing was actually yesterday from Department of State, and they're indicating that it would be that this pause would not be very enduring. They're still encouraging people to apply for student visas, which I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. And it says, they're basically trying to make sure that consulates and embassies are going to put into place whatever social media vetting protocol that they're aiming for. And it's not going to be a lengthy or ongoing dynamic. I'm reading it directly from the briefing. It was meant for a specific, almost an administrative adjustment. And they do indicate in there that maybe on Thursday, which is tomorrow, there might be something more specific, but it says perhaps on Thursday. So not necessarily, right? So, I mean, it's definitely making people concerned. They're concerned about securing their student visas on time. They're concerned about, we have a lot of J1 trainees that we're talking to, physicians who are going to be going into clinical training. Right?
As a reminder, there 25% of all the doctors in America that have to go through training through these residency and fellowship programs in order to be allowed to practice medicine. A quarter of all the doctors who come in, who start training every year in the United States, are J1 visa holders. A quarter of them. So, when they do this pause right before the beginning of the training year for the doctors, it has actually a pretty it has a pretty big ripple effect on hospitals all over the country who are expecting these doctors to be here. They all are trying to apply for their visas in the month of June in order to get here in July. They can't, they usually, because of a lot of the way things time, they end up not able to really apply until June in order to be able to get here. So there could be, if you're sick in a hospital, I mean, there are a lot of hospitals where residents do a lot of the work,
Absolutely.
physicians all over the country. And in the first half of July, there's going to be a lot of problems, I predict, because of the absence of thousands of doctors who are probably going to be late starting their programs because of this, ill-considered, vetting that makes the Heritage Foundation happy, but it's not keeping us safer by keeping all these doctors out. They should have had an exception to the rule, exception for that group right from the beginning on there, and it just is the usual poor management. I have a lack
of the ripple, an understanding of the ripple effects, just like what you're saying, Greg. Just doesn't contemplate these effects.
Yeah.
I'll note also, in terms of the SEVIS record terminations, right? A lot of that is quieting down now. There's a lot of litigation that, there's a lot of negotiations happening within that litigation. And USCIS, as many of you are already aware, they've come out and this has been really policy statements that we've received and seen in the course of litigation, where they've indicated that there won't be any gaps, there won't be issues with adjudication of future benefits with USCIS, that the SEVIS record termination is not the same thing as a status violation. It's kind of been walking back this policy that came out to the extent of restoring, as they say in the law, the status quo ante, right? As if it hadn't happened before. Now, there's still the question of what will happen for those students who had their visas revoked on this basis, through some type of criminal database hit that was, for dismissed charges and things of that sort. And that is not, that's not fully resolved. That remains a question mark at this point. Let's see, a couple other things. Optional practical training. Some of you might have seen some notices that came out. Basically, some students will be receiving some letters indicating that they are getting to more than 90 days of OPT unemployment, or it'd be 150 days of unemployment if you count STEM OPT time. So once students hit that unemployment, they're technically rendered out of status of their student status. And the letters that are coming are basically saying if your SEVIS record is not updated within 15 days of the date of this notice, SEVP, the Student Exchange Visitor Program, they will terminate the SEVIS record. So it's something to be aware of. This is not exactly new. This did happen during the latter part of the first Trump administration, very much the same message. So it's just very important for students to be aware of how they are reporting their OPT time in their student portal, or how they're reporting it to the designated school official at their university, and making sure that information is up to date, right? Even if it was like a volunteer position that is directly related to the course of study is acceptable for purposes of optional practical training, but you still have to report it in your student portal. I believe that students don't have direct access to an unemployment counter, but your university does have access to this. And it's basically like it's ticking up the number of days until it hits 90 days. So you just want to make sure that you're in touch with your school about that you know how that information was reported, because that is happening.
What about the Harvard students?
Yeah, that's actually where I was going next. So there's a bunch of things going on here, Greg, to kind of unpack a lot of this, right? So, I don't make light of it. I think it's an absurdity, but I mention it to you.
I'll make light of it because Harvard just is.
Yeah,
and they it's like the Trump administration. Ooh, we're going to stick it to Harvard and all that, and then Harvard will answer within 24 hours. And a judge will give Harvard. I mean, it's like the biggest losses by the administration have been in that Boston court whenever Harvard walks in on there. And they basically within hours, a judge makes a decision. And it's not easy to get a temporary restraining order. I mean, you have to prove that, that the other side really overstepped. You have to prove it's extremely likely that you're going to win a trial on there. And the administration is they keep taking swings at Harvard, and Harvard just basically keeps catching these pop flies on there. So it's not it seems like it feels good when the ball connects with the bat until the person's out immediately on there, which is what's happening. But I've told students at Harvard who are still contacting me, and I'm sure they're contacting you. It's just like, Harvard's got this. Don't panic. That Harvard degree, getting into Harvard is still the major accomplishment of your life, and you will still be able to get that Harvard degree if you are just take a breath and let Harvard handle things.
And kind of a brief aside too, there was they are trying to remove the ability of Harvard to issue F1 and J1. I guess I-20s and DS 2019s, right? Like to allow F and J students to and exchange visitors to be at Harvard. And there was, they were quite well prepared for that attempt and wrote this beautiful 72-page complaint. And then I think the TRO was like 50 some odd pages, their request for the TRO. And very quickly got that temporary restraining order. That is still
how that firm does this. I don't know, might be a couple of firms that are doing it, but how they turn this stuff around in a day. These magnificent pleadings.
They were planning. They knew that it was going to happen. I'm sure.
I don't know if they know exactly what the. I mean, you think they know which?
Well, because they kept receiving a lot of correspondence, from DHS, that kept requesting things that were well beyond what the regulations require schools to report. So, they could only comply with it so much, just ultimately with those requests. But, we're complying with everything that the regulation requires, right? So anyway, so that's still ongoing. And while that litigation is ongoing, they've also now gone through the proper procedure of trying to withdraw the certification. That doesn't mean that the administration will be successful, but now they're actually going through the regulatory means to do that, right? And I think, it's just to your point, I think it's very, very important that there be litigation at this time, because sometimes it really does feel it's like darts on a dartboard. And just kind of seeing whatever will hit the bullseye. And litigation is a way to challenge things when they are not done in the proper ways, right? Which is exactly what happened with trying to remove this certification. So that's one thing that's happening. There's, in terms of Department of State, there's this enhancing national security by addressing risks at Harvard University. This was to restrict the entry of students. It made it clear within it that it was students who were, beginning to attend, students and exchange visitors who were beginning to attend Harvard University. So it was a little bit more narrow. It was supposed to suspend for 6 months that entry. And that's the one, Greg, that you were referencing that's also been, there's a temporary restraining order on that as well that came the very next day, right? So the proclamation came June 4th, June 5th, TRO. And then there is this.
What you predicted, Greg, on last week's live stream. You said within 24 hours, I bet this TRO is going to be granted. And Greg won that.
It might have been a little longer, but I was close. On there. There were. Can I mention a couple other things from the courts in the last few days? Unless you have more student stuff you want.
Well, I only have. I guess I only had 2 other things. Maybe I should mention those real quick.
Okay.
One of them is just the Harvard Enhanced Vetting Pilot Program, which is, basically anyone who is traveling to Harvard University, whether it's an F or a J or other categories, that they are trying to do some vetting there. And I think it's interesting here.
That wasn't enjoined, or is it?
No, this is not, to my knowledge, this has not been enjoined. This is a, it might have been a leaked cable also, Greg, but it mentioned about this pilot of expanded screening and vetting. And it pointed out that a lack of, this was reported by Politico, by the way, on May 30th. And it said the lack of any online presence may be reflective of evasiveness or call into question the applicant's credibility. So it's really weird about that. Yeah.
If you're not tweeting or you're not posting your meals on Facebook, they think you're hiding something.
Right. And the only other thing I'll just mention is just the new visa policies. This was probably brought up in prior live streams too, but the new visa policies put America first, not China, May 28th.
Wait, do you know who doesn't post on social media? Judges.
It's true.
That will be that a judge is going to get a good laugh when they find out that people are being targeted because they are posting on social media. That is the last group you want to make that argument to. Just saying, how many judges do you see on Facebook? Not too many. Not too many on Twitter. I mean, there's a couple that are posting on social media, but very few. Even if it's okay for them to do it, as a matter of prudence, they don't do it. So I don't think that's going to carry a lot of. If somebody wants to litigate on that issue, you will probably find very friendly people that are making decisions on that issue based on personal experiences.
Right.
So anyway,
not everybody is constantly plugged in and posting on Truth Social and all that. So,
all right, can I talk now? Because there are 2 things that are happening in two different cases. One today, one yesterday. So I think I had reported on that there was this case in Boston where they were suing. There was a suit over humanitarian parole, and it was over CHNV, and the class got certified, and they issued a national injunction, and then the Supreme Court came in and basically, said it took that relief away. And it put the entire Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela parole program in doubt. But there was a second part to that case, and that first part is still kind of ongoing. But the second part to that case was for that there had been a freeze on benefit applications by people who were in parole applications who were applying for something else, like, for example, filing for adjustment of status based on a marriage, or filing for asylum, or filing for a bunch of other things, and all those benefits have been frozen. And the judge had ordered separately for the administration to start resuming those benefits adjudications. The judge was super angry that the administration was still ignoring that part of his order, even though that wasn't covered by the Supreme Court in their decision. And he said last Friday that he gave them them until Monday to basically explain themselves why benefits haven't been resuming adjudications. He gave them yesterday a couple more days until Friday to confirm that they are resuming adjudicating benefit requests for all of the class of non-citizens granted entry through humanitarian parole. I'm doing a lot of work for and a lot of consulting with the Ukrainian parolees in particular. Like there's at least 100 diversity visa winners who are trying to adjust status around the country, and they have until September 30th. Otherwise, they lose out on getting the green cards based on diversity visa. But there are other groups as well, and that case is critical as far as their being able to get their green cards, and it affects a lot of others as well. So I was very happy to see that the judge is not is not playing games in that case. Sometimes some judges will let things slide for a while, and then weeks turn into months, and you don't get justice. But this judge is not having it. The other thing that was news today involved the ACLU. And the ACLU has asked the DC District Court judge to postpone implementation of a rule and guidance expanding expedited removals of non-citizens to the interior U.S. And this is basically has to do with the courtrooms. So one of the things we've mentioned is that in a previous live stream, it's unbelievable, is that people show up for their removal proceedings. They may have an asylum claim, they may have a cancellation removal claim, whatever they have, they're showing up for their hearings, doing what they're supposed to. The ICE attorney is then saying, "Oh, we're happy to dismiss," and the judge says, "Oh, good, I get this off my docket." And then what they're doing is arresting these people in the hall, ICE officers, and trying to immediately remove them. And that's garnered some headlines, and it's partially what's that kind of tactic, as well as others. And mass raids have, that's kind of set off the business in California, which we may or may not talk about. But that case by the ACLU that was filed today is looking to to have a impact on that particular practice. So that was good news there. There are going to be some other case announcements over the next few days on some other issues. One of which, two of which, hopefully will be things that Siskind Susser is involved with on there as far as our impact group. But we'll have more to say about that soon. But I did want to mention those two cases because, for all the tough news that we're hearing, that these litigation wins, I think, keep us all encouraged that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Anyway, Meghan, what else you got?
Well, you brought up what's going on in California, so we can touch on that.
Gavin Newsom. So California, there is a legal battle side to this whole thing. I mean, aside from like what triggered it, and we all, we kind of know the what's been happening in a lot of communities around the country, and particularly these blue cities that are where it seems like ICE is being more ramped up and trying to do more enforcement there, just kind of to make a point that who's in charge. The new everybody's probably aware of it. The president has nationalized the National Guard in California, and also sending in Marines. So the legal news is there's a challenge that's been filed by Los Angeles and the state of California, and Governor Newsom is asking a federal court to halt guard deployment, and claiming that the governor is the one who has authority on that issue, and not the president. The Trump administration today told a federal court in California that federalizing the National Guard is unreviewable in court. That's like always their tactic, is like, you're not allowed, judge. And the judge is like, well, that's like not the argument that I think it really appeals to judges when you tell a judge that. I mean, some judges, will back off, but a lot of judges, it's like, that's just like waving a red check flag in front of a bull on there. But that's what they're claiming. You know, is this going to be another thing that ends up having to go up to the Supreme Court in a hurry for a decision? Is the Supreme Court going to be comfortable with, with this, given I think the administration will probably, if they can get away with this, good luck, New York, Chicago, Philly, DC, and all these other places. Well, DC probably has more authority to do it. But that's so that in California, I think that's where the next battle is. It doesn't seem like, it seems like things are relatively calm in LA at this point. So I don't know what these officers are actually doing, other than basically making a point. So we'll see in this court battle where things go. I think a lot of people are who maybe thought that that there was a sort of an overreaction on one side in the election, and that I think this might be eye-opening for them. There was a pretty dramatic Quinnipiac poll that came out today that said that the Trump administration is underwater 16 points in national opinion polls now. That was, for a president who started out with a net positive public opinion in that same poll after the inauguration to now, he's lost, somewhere around 20 points in that poll since January. Does that matter? I don't know, but it's we at least it should be making Congress nervous on there, because if the president is underwater 16 points, presidents usually do poorly in their first midterm election. That's usually their worst election, and they're already basically on the brink of losing Congress in both houses already. So how long the Republicans stick with everything that's going on, we will see. Last week had been the Elon break. Had happened around that time. Seems like Elon is trying to get back in Trump's good graces, but it did, I think, show some fissures in the Republican Party. So we will see. All right, Megan, what else?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Greg, is that hearing set for tomorrow on the California, the TRO issue?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Not prepared.
Yeah, hopefully we'll find out soon.
Yeah.
I guess next, Greg, did you want to talk about the one big beautiful bill?
Yeah, they keep finding things in this bill. First of all, you have to know that the way it works is just because the House has passed it, and they passed it like by the barest minimum. They only had 3 votes, a 3-vote majority. The Democrats voted uniformly against it, so they had to basically get and they were able to pass it by, I think, 1 vote. But there have been a number of things that are not immigration related that have made a lot of people upset, including Elon, basically, complaining about his things. But kind of the interesting thing about that bill is there are deficit hawks out there that don't like all the spending. And one of the biggest areas of spending is on immigration enforcement, something I forget how much. Hundreds of billions of dollars that they want to spend on new enforcement measures and building massive new detention facilities and hiring like crazy and all that. So that's part of the problem, is the budget bill that would allow for that is going to increase the budget in the national debt by trillions of dollars every year. And that's there are still some fiscal hawks in the Republican Party, but within that bill, there's all kinds of immigration provisions that have nothing to do with spending, that just make things a lot harder, like taking work authorization away from pending asylum applicants. Has nothing to do with the budget, but that's in there. There's a lot of things in there that are immigration related that they just stuck in there. One of the reasons why that might matter, and there's a number of examples of this beyond immigration, is in the Senate, there's this person called the parliamentarian, and the parliamentarian in the Senate one of the things that there's this thing called the bird rule, and they're not supposed to be a lot in budget bills. If there are things that are not really spending measures that are in there, they're not supposed to. Those provisions are not supposed to be in there. And why does that matter? You may say, well, why not just take them out? Well, I mean, part of the problem is that with a spending bill, there's this thing called the filibuster, where the Democrats can, with 40 votes, and they have 40 votes, can normally block a bill from moving in the Senate, but they make an exception for spending bills because a long time ago, some wise people in the Senate figured out that the whole government is crippled if you can get 40 people to stop it. There's no way to fund the government and keep it going. So they have said for budget bills, the filibuster doesn't apply, and you can pass a budget with 51 votes or 50 votes plus the vice president if it's same party, and that's that's well and good. But if you put provisions in there that are not budget related, then that's important because it means that you have to get essentially 60 votes instead of 40 votes, because the filibuster would apply in those cases. So the parliamentarian may strip out a lot of the immigration stuff that's getting stuck into that bill. There is some talk about potentially overruling the parliamentarian. And there are some Republicans who have been around the block a few times who know that what goes around comes around, right. And that if they play those games now, it's going to be very soon, maybe in 18 months, that the Democrats are in charge in the Senate and can, basically load up bills. And even if Trump can, is just spending the last 2 years of his term vetoing bills that come at him from the Democrats, it may feel like forever before the next presidential election, but it's not going to be forever on there. So that's something that we'll see where they go. And I give all that background to let people know that there is some fairly major immigration change that would be happening if that budget bill actually passes. So, we will see. Elon was against it because, apparently because of deficits, also because a lot of things are tax deductions that were related to electric cars and things like that, which obviously have an impact on him, were being taken away. But that's that will probably be the most significant immigration bill in a generation if that budget bill should actually get signed by Trump. On there, as far as things that are going to happen and ways the immigration system is going to change if the bill passes. So we're not talking that much about it. It's sort of hard to get your hands around it when, it's still a changing thing on there. But back to what I was talking about before. So what's happening is that the House passed it by one vote. The Senate is going to pass a different version. They already have said certain things that the House passed are not, they're not going to find acceptable, which then means that the House and the Senate, if the Senate should pass this bill and they get past the parliamentarian, they deal with all the other stuff, they still have to go back to the House and reach some kind of agreement. And there have already been House members who have said, I regret voting for this. There were things in there that I didn't have a chance to read, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a she's a bit of a celebrity on the right, a Georgia congresswoman. She's mad about something I actually agree with her on. There was a provision in there that said that only the federal government can regulate AI, and the states that are trying to regulate to issue regulations on AI safety can't do so. And they were trying to basically stick it to California and give a gift to Silicon Valley companies because California is contemplating a very big AI bill. But there are at least 12 states that are looking at that. And I know a few things about AI on there, so I followed that legislation. But Marjorie Taylor Greene said she would not have voted for this bill had she known what was going to happen. I think she would have voted for the bill because even if she had been told about it, because I don't think she would have understood until after the thing already happened why people in her district might be mad about it. But it's that is one example of hundreds and hundreds of examples of things where people voted and didn't really, I think, appreciate what was going to be coming. So that's a big, beautiful bill rant.
I kind of remember too, Greg, that, like as you're saying about the parliamentarian, like there is precedent for the parliamentarian stripping provisions.
She took out all the immigration reform stuff when the Biden administration. It's like
I recall that too.
The Biden administration had major immigration reform provisions in a budget bill, which would have been, oh my God, that would have been awesome. So,
and they didn't overrule the parliamentarian either.
Yeah,
probably keeping in mind
the Democrats basically like, okay, sorry, we tried.
Yeah, right.
And I was one of the ones to say overrule the parliamentarian on there, but it's like, you know what? If they, I would rather consistency is important. There. So if they're going to, if the Republicans were able to knock off a really great immigration bill from being included in the budget, then I have no qualms about them having to pay the price just to go around with over the same thing. So, all right. All right. We don't have questions tonight. We have a few. So I do. I don't know whether we're doing it. I don't think we're going to. Well, maybe we'll do like a live stream just for a few minutes next week from the conference on there. Wednesday night is the, that's the opening day. There are a lot of immigration lawyers I know who watch us because people tell me about it. So I will tell people that if you are going to Denver to the conference, first off, I'm speaking on a panel on Wednesday afternoon about AI data security, and it's not really as much about immigration law. It's sort of about how to put good systems in your law firm to be able to minimize your risks. And we're going to have a representative from a legal malpractice insurance company on our panel who's going to kind of give his perspective, but it's going to be a good panel. So if you're at the conference on Wednesday, come to that panel. Also, Adam, are you speaking?
Yes. Yeah. This one's going to be basically other options, if you're not selected in the H-1B lottery. So we'll be speaking a lot about F issues. We'll be speaking about J's. We'll be speaking about L's, O's, a lot of the rest of the alphabet soup. Okay.
And then I am speaking on an AI. So we had a big announcement on the, we have a sister company, VisaLaw.ai, and I'm involved with that company, and Adam's wife, Emily, is a key player over there. And anyway, VisaLaw.ai had a big announcement today about an integration of our drafts product with Serenade, which is one of the big case management products. But the founder of Serenade and I are going to be doing a program at the conference about practical AI uses for lawyers. I think it's on Friday, but anyway, that's so I'm looking forward to that second talk during the week. And then I will be at the VisaLaw.ai booth in the exhibit hall for a lot of my spare time during the course of that few days. So if you're at the Denver conference and you go to the exhibit hall or go to one of our panels, happy to and say hello on there so we know there's anybody who was listening to this. But anyway, that's so I don't know if we're doing our program next week because all of our lawyers are at that conference. This is sort of like the one time. By the way, next week is a terrible week to try and reach an immigration lawyer in America. I tell people, it's like, if you couldn't get an appointment with your immigration lawyer next week, this is why on there. We do have a question. Wait, hold on.
Yes, we do. Yeah, and just so while Greg's putting that up, just so you'll remember, you can post through, through our LinkedIn, through Facebook, where else? Through X as well, Greg?
Yes.
Hooked into a lot of things, and we will see your question.
That is a very good question that Adam and I were involved in a big discussion of that today. So let me just tell you without probably overstepping what I'm allowed to talk about. So we have been, Adam and I have been very involved in one of the larger student lawsuits with the behalf of about 350 students. We sued, we sued both the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Secretary of State over both CVIS terminations and visa revocations. It's not really breaking news to tell people, because we mentioned it last week that we're pretty close to settling a lot of the issues on the CVIS side with the Justice Department and the and DHS. But we are not going to settle on visa. I mean, we're not giving up on student visa revocations, and one way or the other, that issue will be continuing with us, probably in a separate suit, but with the same plaintiffs that were involved in the first suit, and possibly adding new plaintiffs on there. So we will have some news on that, hopefully. And maybe tomorrow, Adam. I don't know how long it's going to take. I mean, it seems like every day we're like on the verge of having this resolved, but we're very, very close. And I think that that we should have some news. So, Ahmed, the answer is yes. There is a good chance that revoked student visas can be restored by a lawsuit. We've already made a lot of our legal arguments in the case that was filed in Atlanta. And those arguments have not, we haven't been able to really litigate that part of this yet. But I am feeling good about that issue, and that hopefully, in the next few days, the case will be separated out, and we'll be working on that issue separately. So stay tuned. On there. There is a that I think is going to be happening. There you go. Our friend Holly from out west. Yeah, appreciate it. And she's going to. You're going to miss the conference this year. That's too bad. On there, if you are a physician immigration lawyer, on Friday afternoon there is a reception for the IMG task force. I used to be the chair of that for many years. And I recommend that you take advantage of the fact that that's going to be happening and go to that meeting on Friday. It's always at 5 o'clock. If you're wanting to go, you're going to be there, and you need to know where it is. Connect with me, and I will tell you. I'm not sure it's in the program or not. Probably is on there. But anyway. That's I think that's all I have on my list. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to chat about. There were some quick things I wanted to mention on TPS. Just some news. So one is the administration has notified through the Federal Register that they will be ending TPS for Nepal. Nepal got a TPS because of an earthquake. Some of you may remember that from a few years back. That was pretty serious. I don't know enough about the Nepal situation to know whether that is, whether that's something that would have a decent shot at litigation. But what I will tell you, because this is coming up in this, and there was another piece of news today where a court in New York today heard challenges against ending TPS for Haiti. That it's not good enough. Just because it's easy for the administration to grant TPS doesn't mean it's easy for them to take away TPS. They are under an obligation to show that there has been a change in the situation that justifies the removal of TPS. So the administration has to show really everything is good in Haiti now, which we know Haiti is as big a mess as ever. On there as far as what's going on with political violence and all sorts of other things. TPS for Nepal, I'm not quite sure is the same thing, but he has the same problem with Venezuela. which even though the Supreme Court has, barred the national injunction on Venezuela, it doesn't mean the judge doesn't have the right to say that the administration didn't follow the law on it. And the Supreme Court decision doesn't have anything to do with that substantive issue. They just said that they had a problem with national injunction. So that's news on TPS. Finally, there was some news from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, federal agency, where a judge today ordered the U.S. Office of Refugee Resettlement to reconsider cases of unaccompanied migrant children held in government custody due to some very strict Trump sponsor identification rules. So that's a really good piece of news as far as family reunification goes. And, I think it's good to end on tonight on some good news on there that, again, and judges that are superheroes, in my opinion, by basically not rolling over and are doing what needs to be done to preserve the rule of law in the country. So I'll end there, and thank you guys. We may see you next week. Otherwise, it might be 2 weeks. We'll probably just, but if we do it next week, it's probably going to be very abbreviated, and it may be live from a party. So, anyway, talk to you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.